All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call this meeting in order and ask that everybody stand to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, correspondence. We have two letters we received. First is from the director of the Outdoor Wisdom Public Library, stating that the library will hold its annual election and tax levy vote on Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. The Board of Trustees is asking for a levy amount of $1,690,129 for the library's full year 2023-2024 operating budget. On the same ballot, there will be the election of one library trustee, and the voting will take place by voting machine and absentee ballot at the library, which is 1 McFarland Drive, Warwick, New York. The second letter we received was from Assemblyman Carl Brabenec. It was in response to our advocacy letter the board sent to him on January 6th regarding the COVID-19 vaccine being an option for parents when sending their children to public schools within New York State. He thanked us for reaching out to him on behalf of the Warwick families and the school community, and applauds us for continually standing up to protect the freedoms of the Warwick Valley school community. And he will do whatever was in his power to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccine remains a parental choice and to defend our parents' freedom. Moving on to the approval of minutes, I would like a motion to approve the minutes of the January 5th, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Education. So moved. Bob? Second. And John? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like to open it up to comments on agenda items only. If anybody would like to make a comment on an agenda item, now is the time. I would like a motion to accept, approve, or authorize the consent agenda items as they appear on the agenda.
So moved.
Lynn?
Second.
And Sharon? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Leach for reports from the administration.
Well, good evening, everyone. As you know, we are scheduled this evening to begin to discuss our budget process. There's a couple of presentations this evening. Some may pay a little more attention to than others, but certainly, as you know, we talk to the mic a little bit. As you know, we will have a web page devoted to the school budget process, and all presentations will be uploaded. So the first presentation I have here really is just an overview of the budget development process and outlines what we'll be looking at over the next few months. So obviously the school budget process is an annual one that doesn't kick off tonight. However, in light of the governor's run, the executive budget that we now have more information on, it's just a good time of year to really begin to have these discussions, perhaps a little bit earlier than most, but I think it's wise just to review. So you'll see an outline of what we'll be looking at over the next few months. This evening, again, we will focus on the process itself, as well as the long-range planning study that we did. It's critical to keep our eye on enrollment, any fluctuations with student enrollment as we plan for this budget and for years to come. And we take a look at our first proposed state aid. So traditionally, the governor comes out at the end of January and shares what we call a governor's run, an executive budget, and it gives us an idea about what the district will be looking at in terms of, potentially looking at, in terms of revenue from formula-based aid, which is your foundation aid and your expense aid, primarily for Warwick. And we'll take a closer look at that this evening. We'll have a work session on February 16th, and we'll dig a lot deeper into what we project revenue to be at that time, as well as start to look at the expense side with payroll and benefits. And we're also doing a thorough analysis and report on our transportation department, and specifically our fleet, from the number of miles, the age of the buses, what we need to, what we're looking at in terms of potentially maintenance costs or purchasing buses, etc. And our director of transportation will help us with that. And we'll move on throughout the spring as we move into eventually the public hearing, which is May 4th. So you can see there we have quite a few presentations. I know that you look forward to them, and I certainly enjoy them. I'm actually a little bit excited this evening, and I promise I'll even get more serious, Mr. Allen. I'm using a new software, a new, whatever you want to call it, app called Flipping Book, which I discovered about an hour before the meeting. I said, look at this, you can put your PDF into this, and it actually looks like you're flipping pages. So I'm excited about that, and maybe I'm the only one. But look what I can do, Lynn, so you can see.
That's good.
Look, Lynn, is that accurate? So, just when you thought you knew all my talents, I got a new one. All right, so the budget is a year-long process, like I said. Mr. Holmes does his rollover budget, is certainly meeting with leaders throughout the district to take a look at what our needs can be for the future, what the staffing needs, other resources that we may need, looking at our revenue streams, etc. What are our collective bargaining agreements calling for? Our biggest expense obviously is human capital, which I use that term affectionately, in terms of our talented workforce, and looking at what those expenses are going to be. And of course, he's always looking at cost-saving measures to take a look at. I'm not going to read every timeline slide, but they will be posted for folks to take a look at, but it gives you a nice overview of what our process is like. And it takes us right through March, for example, where Mr. Holmes will finalize the tax cap threshold, what's the allowable increase in the tax cap, not requiring a supermajority vote. So we'll have that number pretty firm, what the allowable increase in the levy would be. And that's, well, we can project it now, roughly, we'll know more in March. And you see the rest of the timeline. Over here on this side, a few of you have seen this guy more times than you'd like to at this point, probably, over the years, but it's a good review of some of the challenges that we have that we consider. And I'm going to push the minus here a little bit and see if I can, okay. So, taking a closer look, obviously, what are the challenges that you consider with the school budget process? Well, state aid is typically uncertain. This year it looks more promising, certainly than most, and we'll talk this evening about foundation aid, which for a district like Warwick, given the wealth index is around, and our population, et cetera, of students, number of students, is around $20 million. Off the top of my head, we're in that ballpark. This year, foundation aid is being fully funded for the first time in a long, long, long time. So you'll read headlines in the paper, millions and millions of dollars spent on education, more from the regarding the state's contribution, and that's great. That's wonderful, and I just remind us all that is a restoration of the foundation aid that we should have had for many years. So we'll talk this evening about, we've been introducing more reserves as a revenue. We've increased, fortunately, non-tax revenue sources. We'll look at that as well, what that looks like in the future. But we should be, we certainly are grateful to have the foundation aid fully funded, particularly in these high inflationary times. And what our increases in the tax levy have been in recent times, particularly the last couple of years, a reduction last year, negative decrease in the tax levy, and the year prior, zero, no increase in the tax levy. So in these inflationary times, that's certainly not sustainable. It's certainly much more challenging when your state aid is an an issue, which is about 30% of our revenue. We take a look at staffing, what our needs are there, from retirement, how program may shift that, how enrollment is, what that's looking like. Of course, our contracts, our collective bargaining agreements are critical to be cognizant of and to be mindful of during that process. We wait for information from BOCES. We, in the BOCES budget, we've talked a lot about that this year from different lenses, whether it's their capital work or their administrative budget. Health benefits is a significant driver for us, for retirees, as well as for current employees. So each year, what's the increase in the premium, whether it's an individual plan, a 2-member household family plan, a 3-member or more household plan, which is even a larger contribution. What new student programs do we have? Are we looking at? So, it all begins with what our goals are, preparing students for their future, taking a look at what our goals are programmatically and for our students, and are there any new opportunities for them? Is there a cost to that? Special education, a significant driver for all school districts. It's certainly an investment that we have to give very strong consideration to and budget appropriately. Student enrollment. Tonight we'll take a look at our enrollment study. So I did stand before you almost 10 years ago and we looked at numbers like, wow, we may be a district of 2,700 students, maybe 2,800 students. And we're one of the very few districts outside of your inner city districts in New York that actually that enrollment grew quite a bit, and we'll look at that this evening. So that's no longer a balancing tool, and it almost made another bubble up there for us, or at least I guess under the enrollment, it should be noted. So for many years, enrollment was declining. So a teacher retired, for example, maybe didn't need to replace that teacher. And of course, fewer students typically, or they don't come in nice little bundles of 20 or 22, nevertheless, fewer students, typically less expense. So that's no longer really fair for us as our enrollment's gone up. But the good news is, it looks like it's gone up, but it's pretty stable. It should be pretty stable over the next decade from what we're looking at in our studies. Unfunded mandates, debt service, that's important to keep an eye on, especially expiring debt service. So debt, New York State provides you with money, of course, when you do capital projects or even when you built Sanfordville 30 years ago. And as that debt expires, the revenue and the expense don't always match. Often the revenues exceed the expense at that point, so you actually lose some state revenue. And that's important to keep an eye on, and of course debt service in general. Unfunded mandates, that's important to take a look at as well. I didn't see too many in this proposal from the governor outside of an increase in universal pre-K. So some of the foundation aid increase that we received has to be offset for pre-K, about $500,000. And while that's wonderful in a lot of respects, it doesn't fully fund the program for us. So we're looking, we can double the number of students that participate, but the district has to build in their budget the money to pay the difference between what the state provides, which today's dollars, I think $6,410 roughly, and what our providers charge, which is usually more than that, by about $1,500 or so off the top of my head. So those are just some examples of what we keep in mind. I mentioned health insurance. That's a historical look. All the budgets that I've been part of here. We've had years, 18% increase in premium. Wow, that was a rough one. The consortium, we work with about other 20 districts or more in a health consortium. So we take advantage of the numbers of employees and spreading over the cost over thousands of individuals. The health plan is healthier, no pun intended, than it was years ago in terms of reserves and actually oversight and management. So we're doing better, but nevertheless, what we have there, we're projecting for the 23-24 is an increase that ranges from 4.4% to 6.4%. The 4.4% would be more of a family plan, and the 6.4% would be, the 4% more of an individual plan, the 6.5% would be for a family plan with a larger, 3 or more members. So, you thought, gee, that doesn't sound too bad. Well, the we've got about 13.6 million that's in the budget for health insurance. So you can, simple math, you can see it as a significant area to keep an eye on. So we are, again, continuing to take a look at what our needs are programmatically with staffing, also looking at fund balance. What is our reserve plan? What do we feel will be responsible? Last year for example, in order to, for the board to approve a budget with a negative levy, with a slight reduction in the levy, we had to use about $500,000 more in reserves as a revenue to do that. So we have to be careful, and we're very mindful of our reserve plan because that's not sustainable, obviously, each and every year. So we'll take a look at that this year. But overall, that's a little bit about the process. There's some cost-saving measures there. I'm not going to read them all. Many of you have heard them before, but that's a list of what we look to do. Whether it's our own folks doing projects and buildings rather than contracting, whether it's being fair but smart in terms of contract negotiations, taking advantage of energy employment contract, performance contracts rather, or even the solar project, which is around netting us about savings between $250,000 to $290,000 a year. So those are some examples. The CTEC savings, as you know, we have 3 programs up at the high school where our students stay back and take advantage of our own program rather than being transported to BOCES, where the tuition is probably between $12,000 and $13,000 a student. So we save a little bit of money there, and they get to take an extra course and stay in their home high school. So those are some of the dates coming up. Those are some of the legal dates that we keep in mind. The first legal advertisement all the way down to the budget vote, which is on Tuesday, May 16th. So that's a little bit about the process, and now we'll take a quick look at, let's see, which one would that be, Susan?
Right back.
This one? There we go. Thanks. All right. So, the long-range planning study that we conduct each year, or every other year, looks at births, population, trends in housing, what does non-public school enrollment look like for us, in general district enrollment, and then grade configuration. We learned throughout the years that it's very smart for us to keep a close eye on this, to ensure responsible class sizes, from hiring to program development, to building utilization, to grade configuration, et cetera. So, and I think it's important to take a look at some of this. So the actual births in Warwick, and it's there, and really what we found here is the number of births is pretty much between the area of 137 and 186 over that span. I wrote this week a little bit about the housing market. I'm far from an expert in the local housing market, but that is the data that's reported, and you can see the median price of a home in Warwick, say 10 years ago. And if it's hard to see, I'll make it bigger, but about 160 homes sold that year, all the way down to 2021. I don't have 22's data yet, but I'm gonna make a prediction that at least the median price went up. But as you can see, 472 homes sold recently at $441,000 median price for a home in Warwick, in the Warwick Valley Central School District, rather. So we keep a close eye on that as well, because during the summer for us, our district, our enrollment doesn't come nice bundle, here's kindergarten, and then maybe a sprinkle of a few kids. We get quite a few students over the summer at the middle school and high school level. So it's important for us to have a good understanding about that. So, a look at non-public enrollment. First, let me take a look here at the demographic data a little more closely. So the ethnic composition in Warwick shifted slightly. So since between the last decade, the white segment decreased from 82 to 87 to 78%. Hispanic grew from 9.4% to 12.5%. Somewhat aligned with what we saw in the county and the state. The long-range planning study also takes a look at non-public school enrollment. And here, if you look at us back in 2007, 8% of the students attended a non-public choice that lived here in Warwick. Today it's 4%. So that's a pretty significant change. You know, 150 students today compared to 376 then. And we continue to see that year after year dip a little bit. All right, so taking a look at enrollment, I'm going to actually make that bigger. You know, I've often said at meetings that, back in 2014, when I looked at the trend and looked at some of the projections, we really were headed to about 2,800 students, and that's no longer the case. You'll see what the projection is currently. We currently have about 3,728 students. We're projected to have a few more next year. We hit our high water mark in 2029, but pretty stable over the next decade. So it looks, as of today, that whether it's the building configuration, the grade configuration, I've had families ask me questions about, elementary speed K to 3, or we need to open another school, or in fact, my predecessor talked about potentially closing another school. That's out of the question. So you see, we're very consistent over the next decade, very little bit of fluctuation with the total enrollment. Yes, there'll be some fluctuation by division, elementary, middle, and high school, but nothing really, I don't think that noteworthy. I think that's good news. And if you take a look at it here from the perspective of sections at the elementary level, you'll see we're anywhere between 23, 21, 24. So how do we come up with those numbers? When we take a look at, no more than 24 students in a class, grades 1 through 4 is our plan. I'll show you the current class sizes in a minute, which are very impressive. And that comes at a lot of thought and expense and investment. So we shouldn't forget that. And while class size isn't everything, it's important to have responsible class size, of course, so we can make sure we meet all the children's needs. At Sanford, you'll see the same kind of range. It might fluctuate a couple of sections, but pretty consistent. I think I might have missed this guy. Yeah, it's just the total enrollment here from the schools. So Sanfordville is projected in 2025 to hit its high water mark at 837, so is Park there at over 500 students. But generally speaking, you see the range is pretty consistent there. Fluctuates by 40 students maybe. We went over the sections already. And lastly, at the middle school and high school, you see the numbers there as well. So the high school is looking, and this does include tuition paying students as well. The high school is looking in about 10 years to be at 1,400 students, and the middle school, that's the middle school, that's high school rather, yeah, and the middle school is looking in 2029, a little over 1,200 students. Again, fairly stable. So that's good news. This may be difficult to see in the back, but I will, oh, there we go. Okay. This gives you a quick glimpse. It is an internal document, so I ask you to get caught in the weeds. I'll just try to give an overview. If you look up where it says Park Avenue and you read to your right, you will see a number next to the teacher's name, and that is the class enrollment as of February 1st. So obviously we give strong consideration, very strong consideration to responsible class sizes, but particularly, of course, at the elementary level and at the primary level. But kids don't always come in, buckets of 15 or 19 or 25, so we have, and we do have to keep in mind our room utilization capacity. But there you get a glimpse. So take a look at Park, for example, where you say K, that's the kindergarten class sizes, 19, 19, 17, 19, 19. So we're ranging in Park. We do have, it looks like a class with 15 or 16, up to one fourth grade class with 24. So those are nice, I believe, very nice class sizes. If you move to Sanfordville, it can get a little confusing because we have some special ed cohorts there, we have some PI cohorts there, but generally you'll see kindergarten, 15, 17, 14, 18, 18, 17. PI is in the bottom. You'll see 2 teachers for PI, 17 each for kindergarten. And you can just let your eyes move from left to right. You get an idea. 4th grade, 22, 23. 3rd grade, 20, 21. So you don't see any 25s or 28s, or my first year teaching 32 5th graders, so we feel good about that. A lot of planning and investment, I think well worth it. And there's your, down below, you have 242 kindergartners, 267 first graders, etc. So if you look at another time when we dig deeper into enrollment trends, I can show you how a cohort starts in kindergarten and grows in Warwick. So if it starts at 240, it doesn't end at 240, that's for sure. And I can show you what it's picking up annually. The middle school and high school, we don't have broken out by class, but it's a little more complex to do that based on number of sections and classes, etc. But that's just an overview of what the enrollment looks like. So the only specific class thing I have there where it says MAC, at your multi-age classrooms in 5th and 6th, 22, 17, but the numbers are very responsible at those levels as well. Additionally, at the middle school and high school now, from 7th grade to 12th grade, we do have the additional course that students are taking, which is a nice opportunity. So taking a look at a little bit about state aid, move away from enrollment, we'll start to look at New York State proposed aid and where does the revenue, what's the revenue look like for a school district. So every public school district in the state is different in terms of what percentage it's going to rely on for its levy versus its aid it receives in foundation and expense aid from New York State. That is primarily determined not only, of course, by enrollment and expense and formulas, but the chief driver is your wealth index. And your wealth index is determined by your adjusted gross income, the average adjusted gross income, as well as fair market values. So for instance, in Orange County, Warwick, for any school district, more than a few hundred kids, has the highest wealth index. So therefore, receives its budget is comprised of less state aid as a percentage of its overall revenue. Now that will change with foundation aid being restored. It'll be a little bit larger of a chunk of our budget, thank goodness. But this is a look at previous years. Local sources, your local revenue, your tuition paying students, your renting of schools, and closed schools. And for us, that's about $4 million for the most part wasn't there 10 years ago, 8 years ago. That was significant during the years with very little to no increase in other revenue streams. That was significant. This is a look at since 2015, although 14, 15, yeah, they're not there. The last X amount of years, you get an idea. So the average increase in the levy over the last 7 years, let's say, is one and less than 4/10. The last decade, about 1.5 has been the increase, average annual increase. So last couple of years, 0 in 21, 22, and a reduction in 22, 23. Those are driven by the tax cap formula, and this board has made the decision many of the years to go below the allowable increase. So there's been times where the levy would have been higher, and the board has decided to make further reductions to account for less of an increase or no increase. So, state aid. For the most part, there's two types of state aid, and there are categorical and other, but really for Warwick, you got two types of state aid that are formula driven. You got your foundation aid and you have your expense driven aid. So, we'll talk about the expense driven aid is based on what you spend and what you use in the prior year. So there are times where we'll have to do a reconciliation, we'll spend less, we receive less aid there. So where the foundation aid is a formula that is set based on, it's a pretty complicated, complex formula, but basically the number of students you have. And that's been fully restored as we talked about. Taking a look at the governor's executive budget proposal, looking at what was proposed in 2022-23 and what was received rather than what was this year, 22-23 compared to 23-24 where we're projecting to be, you'll see the difference, the grand total of about $5 million increase, and that's coming from foundation aid. And again, outside of the $523,800 increase in universal pre-K, which the governor is calling in her proposal a set aside from foundation aid, the rest of that $5 million would be the full restoration of foundation aid. So those school districts that already have a full restoration of foundation aid for the most part, you'll look at their governor runs to see if they received about a 2.99% increase, 3% increase in their foundation aid. For those like Warwick that have been waiting for the restoration, the number is larger and certainly welcome during these high inflationary times. I'm going to skip that one because I think it'll just bore you even more. The foundation aid 5-year history takes a look at, and you'll see over the past couple of years how it's been restored. Now, just to remind those that weren't here during the years where the gap elimination adjustment took place, which started with the Great Recession of 2008, give or take around that time. At that point, the district was faced with about a $6 million deficit. So that necessitated some very serious decisions that had to be made, and painful at times, I'm sure, including closing school buildings. So many, many years later, a lot of advocacy, the full restoration is certainly welcome to us. In these high inflationary times, when you're doing a rollover budget and you're near 5, 6, 7%, before you start making any significant reductions, that state aid is very much welcomed and needed. To talk a little bit about the wealth index, I just wanted to demonstrate two charts. I did this for demonstration purposes only because folks are familiar with these school districts because they're in our region. These are very comparable districts in terms of student enrollment. They were ranging at a couple hundred kids. This is foundation aid, last year's foundation aid, so you'll notice the difference. So you have Menacing, we have a few more students than now. With about $10 million more in foundation aid. Well, why? Well, the reason why is, again, just to remind everyone, one of the challenges we have, the burden, school budget burden falls more on the local taxpayer because of the wealth index. So this is the wealth index. I'm going to do my best to make it bigger. So that's a formula that the state applies, and you'll see that where we are in comparison to districts in our region. So why would Warwick receive 10 million less than, let's say, Menacing? Well, you're seeing with Menacing, the wealth ratio is significantly less, and that's the reason. Moving over to reminder again, foundation aid is the big driver, and then expense-based aids. And expense-based aids really require Tim and his team to do a thorough and accurate job at keeping their eye on what's being promised versus what's the likelihood of what we're going to receive based on what you expended. Because if you do a poor job there, you can start a budget cycle the following year where you've overestimated revenue. So he spends a lot of time reconciling that. So what you may read in a document from the state may not always be actually what's received. And those are examples of the expense-driven aid. Lastly, this is 2023, the state aid that was received, and here's what's projected overall. So when you now, a minute ago I was showing $5 million more or $5+ more million in foundation aid. That's true, that's what's being promised. Of course, the legislature ultimately will have to decide in a few months on making assumptions that they will accept the governor's proposal as is. You'll notice, well, why did the aid go down? Well, that's, Mr. Holmes is making adjustments for the expense-driven aid. So we make sure we are accurate with the actual increase we're going to receive. So we are anticipating about $4,400,000 in additional New York State aid when we account for the adjustment we made, the expense aid that we very likely will anticipate receiving. Again, we wouldn't want to overestimate our revenue by $500,000. Any questions about that? Let me see if I can.
Well,
Yes.
Dr. Leach, traditionally the legislature gives more than the government does.
Right.
Do we have any indication this year?
Well, we're not anticipating that based on, this was the restoration of foundation aid. I mean, is there a chance that perhaps they would advocate for less of a set aside of the universal pre-K or something along those lines? Perhaps. We're not anticipating additional aid. You never know, I suppose. But the full restoration is really a blessing for us. And
This past year, did the legislature just go with the governor? Did they not go at all? Do you remember?
they didn't drop it. It stayed about the same.
It stayed the same.
You're right, Bob. Historically, we kept our fingers crossed, and whatever the governor proposed, we're hoping for, hey, a few more $100,000 here or there to help balance a budget, but, you know, we're guessing, we don't know, but we feel based on the full restoration of foundation aid, it's unlikely.
Right, because that was the explanation last year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's true. So you see I have up 523,000 increase in universal pre-K. We're now totaling over $1 million in pre-K. If you know, you're not given $1 million, right? So you have a number of students who will apply in a lottery. We think now the lottery will be anybody who enters will win, so that we'll have plenty of seats. But the tuition is capped. So if we use today's dollars, $6,400 per child, and our local preschools tell us, well, they bid, it's $8,000. We make up the difference. So Tim will budget for that. So if it's a couple thousand more students times 200 students, it can get up there in price. So, and in our district, that's right now how we go about our universal pre-K. We have local preschool providers, and we've been fortunate that they've been able to work with families. And this slide is a little bit redundant, so we'll move on from that. I'm going to skip that guy. It's there for folks to look at. Some text about this, but this governor's run. Taking a close look at non-tax sources, and we list them all there, but that I was mentioning before has helped with the gap that we've had in our budgets. Ranging in 2012 at about 1.4 million till today at about 4.1 million. So that's significant. That's been a lifesaver over the last 7 years.
Very few other districts have this type of revenue.
That is true. Yeah, we're very fortunate. Our relationship with Greenwood Lake, and about 85% of those students electing our high school, we're very fortunate for that, to have them as part of our school, wonderful students. We have a great relationship with the school district, and of course the students are flourishing. Their tuition dollars is part of that revenue, of course. And then we're also very fortunate as you travel around the state, many closed schools are boarded up and closed, but to have both our buildings fully rented. Pine Island now is rented primarily from Orange Ulster BOCES after significant upgrades, renovations that we did when we decided to open the school during the pandemic, so all our kindergartners and first graders and second graders would be in school every day. So that worked out well. We do have another tenant there, the dance studio, but primarily Orange Ulster BOCES. And then, of course, King's has several. Grace Church being the largest tenant, but has several tenants fully. 100% rented Kingston? 100%. So, absolutely, that's correct. I want to draw your attention to the use of reserves. There we go. So last year, when the last couple of years, going out with slight reduction in the levy and a zero the year prior, we had to introduce more revenue from reserves to the budget. So last year was another $500,000. So it's important for us to look at our reserve plan and to make sure that, I would strongly suggest to the board that we're very careful there. Maybe even think starting to pull a little bit of that back. The appropriated fund balance that we have at 1.4 million as a percentage of our budget is the lowest in the region. So we're very mindful of that. That's a balancing tool, money in the budget, as it uses a balancing tool, helps reduce the levy, but 1.4 million is considerably less in comparably sized districts. ERS stands for the Employee Retirement System. TRS is the Teacher's Retirement System. The EBLAR helps us with expenses pertaining to retirement, et cetera. Unemployment insurance, workman's comp, debt service, so you get the idea. And we have spent a lot of time We don't have, our auditors guide us in terms of our reserve plan and our use of the reserves, but that would be an area that we certainly want to give consideration to. And lastly, we have already started the advocacy process. Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Parsons, Mr. Founds, and I met with Senator Skoufis. Mr. Parsons and I had an opportunity to meet Assemblyman Marr, the mayor. Marr. I think it was Marr when we were joking with the field goal kicker for the Cowboys that missed all those extra points. He had the same name. We were like, so we started to have some conversations in terms of areas. We had a conversation with Senator Skoufis about the universal pre-K funding and why we were appreciative, and our local taxpayers are appreciative in some regards to that support, that we were concerned that if adjustments weren't made, we continue to have to build into the operating budget. We had talked about the possibility of foundation aid being fully funded. At that point, we were having a conversation with him about any potential of the vaccine for COVID-19 being mandated as part of the public health law, and he had told us that was not the case. And we always talk about, in the future, in terms of potential changes that can be made to foundation aid and the formula of inflation, et cetera. So that is an overview of the process that we follow each and every year, and it's a first look at state aid, which is certainly a big chunk of our revenue. Our next meeting is February 16th, where we have the two presentations where we take a closer look at revenue. We'll have harder numbers, as well as we start to look, go over the expense side as well.
With regards to the universal pre-K and the increase, is that expense driven? In other words, we got to spend the money to get the money back?
Yes.
Or they just give us money and we have to? I know like last year, recent years, we pretty much allocated to be able to handle all of the students that have applied. Some people might apply in.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what happens to that money if it was not expense driven?
The state categorizes that as an expense driven aid. Which there is a chance we may not. How many seats will that money be, Tim?
I didn't calculate a lot. It was 77 and you figured twice the
Yeah. So we had no one on the waiting list this year, right? Or did we have a couple?
We did, but
It resolved itself. So there's a chance that we may not. That's an area where, as Tim gets more historical data around preschool, you may see them assume less revenue coming from that, because we may not have a couple hundred students that want to take advantage of that. Some don't like it because it can be limiting to them in terms of the providers, and they may have a history with a certain provider, or their schedule may be different, or whatever it might be. Or we may have a provider that doesn't want to work with us for whatever reason. But that is considered expense driven aid. So we probably, will spend considerable time looking at that and saying, should we, is that a revenue we should anticipate?
This is not
That
a
number.
related question,
Yeah.
but is universal pre-K, do we have history on how many kids didn't have pre-K before universal pre-K? Did we, in our community, are there kids coming to kindergarten that don't have pre-K?
I don't know if Alexandra, if you feel there are children that are taking advantage of it.
They're not taking advantage of it, but we do have some complicated students that are not currently in school.
Yeah.
But I mean,
And this is a lottery, so we can't direct those kids that are not in pre-K, or is
In
it
the past, it was a lottery, but we're looking at this point,
anybody?
it probably will not have to be a lottery for us moving forward. We'll have plenty of seats. So for the youngsters that didn't have an opportunity or want an opportunity, it'll be there. And we'll advertise it, we'll get the word out, absolutely.
and the main driver of that is current.
Yes.
What'd you say, Bill?
I said the main driver of why there's more seats is because the state is currently providing more funding.
Yes, they doubled it for us roughly, right? Yeah. So
that's probably my main concern, is that the hook is being drawn. We're being hooked into the system, and essentially you're hoping that the good graces of all day are going to continue to provide this funding. If the
the funding is not there and they have to pull back, especially based on what's currently happening in the economy,
Yeah.
we're going to have to take the burden.
I think that's a valid concern. I think, even the governor calling it a set aside, the increase of set aside from foundation aid is evidence of that. So really, you could argue we really weren't fully funded back our foundation aid, that $500,000 of it was allotted to universal pre-K, which I'm certainly a big supporter of all our children taking advantage of pre-K, and particularly for anyone who would have that opportunity. If this will help them have that opportunity, then certainly I know we're all for that. But yes, you're 100% right. You could argue it could become an unfunded mandate, or a piece of it is unfunded now, a smaller piece of the pie, but it could become a considerable unfunded mandate.
Right, we have to take care of the rest. So if you have 77 and now we're at 150, there's 77, 75 additional students that we now have to make up the difference.
Yeah, it's probably
So I was
$100,000.
just saying, it's not that it's.
Right,
it's
it's
a
probably a
thing,
couple
but
thousand,
it's
couple.
gonna be a cost.
I mean, currently, right now, 97,000 is coming from the state, 415,000 is coming from the federal government. I don't know what that breakup is now. I'm sure a lot of it's coming from the federal government.
So that's true.
Right, because the main driver of this was in lower income areas. Right, universal pre-K, from my understanding, especially in New York City specifically, that's where the driver starts. Right? And that makes sense in a demographic, economic demographic, or socioeconomic demographic like that, because you had a lot of folks that could not afford some parenting, whatever the situation is, to provide pre-K. I don't know if that is the case in Warwick. I don't think it is. You could make a community used to this.
Right.
Now realize that that burden may fall back on the taxpayer eventually.
My personal preference, yes.
On other programs.
Yes, my personal preference would have been to consider those that are in need and to aggressively, let
That should have
them
been the main.
know, let them know of the opportunity and then to fully fund them. Right, because they have, if you're in need and the preschool's $10,000 and we're providing $6,400, you still may not want to take advantage of the opportunity. Right? So I would prefer it if it wasn't lottery based, and I would prefer, my own personal preference would have been if it was driven by another criteria, which we mentioned to Senator Skoufis, and he understood that, but he also said everything's got to start someplace, and he was worried to go back and let him try to re-legislate, because he wanted the momentum to continue the funding, and then he said maybe down the road they would look at the details, was what he had shared with us, I believe, something along those lines.
It's kind of follow to Sharon's question in response to Bill's concerns too. Can we get that data? Like, is there data that we can look at that will tell us whether we've had an increase in students, though I'm sure it's difficult to parse out whether people would have done it or not.
Yes.
But do we have data available that will tell us whether more students have actually participated in pre-K instruction than in previous years since this program has gone into?
We can get data that'll show us the number of families that are participating in pre-K.
So yes, so we'll be able to tell whether the programs encourage families that weren't participating previously or may not have participated prior to this program that are participating.
I think we can make some informed assumptions.
Yeah, that's great.
A better word than informed assumptions, but I can't think of it.
No, I like that word. Informed assumptions.
Yeah, I think
That's a good word.
there's a chance that we can perhaps do that.
Yeah.
But you're asking me if we can get the data of how many of our kindergarten entrants have participated in a school experience before kindergarten. Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, for the number of years to see if we can draw any correlation between the potential increase in numbers in this program, which can't tell us whether we're meeting a need, but it can lead us in that direction.
Yes. As you know, there's some other intervening variables perhaps, but yes, we can certainly get that raw data.
Yeah, no, there are tons of confounding variables, but at least we'll have some.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
And we can always share that with our representatives.
Yeah, because that would be the main driver, is the lobby folks like Senator Skoufis, if the data proves that, because there's a lot of factors involved, right? You have a certain amount of providers, and maybe those providers do not want to engage,
Yeah.
right? Because now they have to operate from a state-based program, and that may or may not be beneficial for their business and for the children coming in. Right?
Absolutely, and in addition to doing the look back or analysis that we talked about, we could also take a look at perhaps children that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and how many of those students have an opportunity to participate in preschool prior to this program and sense it. That may be even another way to really get what we're all sort of
Trying to figure out.
yeah, and we can do that, absolutely. We can provide that feedback to the center. I was neglectful of mentioning one thing, this hit me, so I'm glad we extended the conversation a bit. In this budget, there's also about a little over $500,000 in the governor's proposal, for tutoring to help with learning loss. Right, Tim? Was it about $500,000? A little over $500,000. Maybe more, maybe closer, between 550 around there. So we don't know much about that yet, but that is another example of a mandate. Maybe a good mandate. It may provide us with the autonomy to meet our students' needs, but I don't know much about it yet. So again, when we talk about full restoration, it's not quite what I would have liked. I wish we had the local control to determine what our needs are and what our students' needs are, but I don't know enough about it yet to really have an opinion yet. It just has a paragraph in the proposal that simply says tutoring to help with learning loss in the elementary grades, reading and math. That's how she ordered it. So I should know more soon. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Dr. Leach. Okay, we're going to move on to reports from the Board of Education. Advocacy, local fair funding committee, OXPA, NISBA. Bill, anything from OXPA? I know they met last night.
Yeah. As far as OXPA is concerned, they have a virtual meeting happening on the 15th of February. 15th, no, Bobby Day should be on the 15th. I think on the 10th, it's going to be virtual. Bobby Day. And the main, there's two main issues they're discussing. Foundation aid, of course, is one of the main ones. The other one is providing lunches, continuing to provide lunches at no cost, right, throughout the state. There's a lot of states now with the economy as such, they're finding that there's more need for students to have food lunch, right? Well, one of the main drivers they're talking about now, and I think it's a main concern across the whole state, is I think 2025 they're going to begin the introduction of electric buses, and by 2027 I believe they want us to be purchasing electric buses. And everybody in the OXPA committee, well, I would say every representative recognized that that is going to be an enormous budget hole that most of our districts won't be able to recover from or build up the funding in time to meet the increase. It's about a double, somewhere in the neighborhood of what's the current cost on a bus right now? So they're estimating like 320, yeah, somewhere around there.
And that's not even from an infrastructure, as you know, engineer said they have to double the size of a bus garage.
Then you have to hire the mechanics that can actually handle it. You also have to have charging stations. You don't know if they're going to run in the winter. They don't know if they're going to run in areas where you have high elevation properly, right?
And we cover many miles. We're not a local, small little district. That's 3 square miles.
Right? And then from a safety perspective, they have to be concerned about fires, right? Because once a battery in one of those buses goes up, you can't live there. Right? Eventually it will burn out, but it's also a safety factor.
Thank you, Bill. We're And there's not anything else? Advocacy or, no? Do you want to cover, speaking with the senator who introduced himself to that day?
Sure.
It was more of just a meet and greet, kind of, just a
Absolutely.
phone call. But
Yeah,
it was nice that he did reach out.
Yeah, so Representative Marr actually reached out to me, and Keith and I were meeting at that time, so he'll probably be joining the call, and introduced himself. He shared that a little bit about his family. He told us that he had worked for Senator Larkin for a short period of time. He talked about how he was in local government, and we had shared a little bit about our concerns with state funding and some of the many of the topics that we reviewed with Senator Skoufis, and he seemed very committed to getting to know the district, its constituents, and the school district better. So it was about a 10-minute call.
Yeah, it wasn't very long, it was about 10 minutes call. He's very intent on, getting to know us and working, with us to help our students.
I told him he missed 4 extra points in a row.
Yeah.
He kids were teasing him on that already. So
Yeah, well, it only took less than 24 hours, but audit, yeah, there's nothing on audit, right? Facilities, nothing on facilities. Okay. Policy?
There are policies on the agenda tonight that we're going to be voting on that represented just minor, really minor changes in word and recommended by the authorities. And we will need to get into the next section.
Thank you, Lynn. Health and wellness?
Yeah. So, for the coalition, the youth coalition is working on a gratitude project. I'm not quite sure what that is, but we'll find out to implement in the town village. Also possibly the school for either February or March. I'll have more on that next month. One of the coalition people, Carrie, is organizing a youth, what's called the PSA, Public Service Announcement Contest, for the middle and high school. Participants create 30-second PSAs on one of the following topics: vaping, bullying, peer pressure, alcohol, and marijuana. Both SAD clubs are participating. The High School Youth Coalition is participating, and also the Community Center Youth Coalition as well. The PSAs will be judged, and there will be an event for the winners and their families. The fentanyl forum event is being rescheduled, showing the documentary film Dead on Arrival. Anyway, for the middle and high school, guest speakers will be Francesca G. Braden, local mom whose son overdosed and she administered Narcan to revive him, and someone from the DA's office. There'll also be the National Guard will be there providing free Narcan trainings. The Hidden Mischief event date has been selected, and that'll be April 19th from 7 to 9 in the middle school media center.
Thank you, Bob. Hey, and our student member, Ms. Roberts, is here tonight to let us know what's going on in the schools.
Hello. Hi, I'm very excited to be back. I know I haven't been here in a while, so just wanted to give you guys a little update. So as a senior, I have applied to a couple of schools and I've got a couple of acceptance letters so far. So far I've gotten into Bing, Temple, Pace, Howard, and City College so far. But to begin, Student Senate is currently getting prepared for next year's elections. They want to get a jump start start to it so far because they realize that they've been running into a problem where treasurer gets there in September and there's like a billion checks that they have to write and a lot of stuff that they have to do. So they decided to start a little earlier this year. They're also beginning preparations for the teacher appreciation picnic at the end of the year, which is going to be run by Sammy Brady, Rory O'Connor, and Charlie Phillips. Currently in student government, as we all know, the graduation is June 24th. It's coming up really, really soon, which is getting a little too realistic for my liking, but applications went out this past yesterday for senior class commencement speaker and to request the teacher to hand out diplomas and stuff, which I have a couple teachers in mind, but it's definitely going to be hard to pick. And the final payment for our senior trip to Virginia Beach is on the 7th. The plan for that is that we'll be leaving the school, we'll all be getting to school at around midnight on the 20th so that we can drive down to Virginia. And on that day, spend the entire day at the beach, have fun, walk the harbor and stuff. And then on the 21st, we would like to go to like Busch Gardens. This is like a amusement park area. And then on the 22nd, we're taking the lunch cruise, which definitely very, very excited for that. And then lastly,
I understand there's a lot of students participating this year.
yes, a lot. Like originally, I'm pretty sure there was 150, and that has almost doubled so far. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Park Hero said that this is like one of the biggest senior trips that he's had in a while.
That's great.
Yeah. Right now, they are holding a Charleston Wrap fundraiser. So if anybody's in the need for some gift wrap, please donate to that fundraiser. It started on the 24th, and it's going to be going on until the 10th. You can send links to people, anybody, and you can get like Mother's Day gifts and stuff like that. They're hoping to raise $8,000 the same way that they did for their popcorn fundraiser in the fall. And it's going to be used towards our senior prom and senior picnic. And speaking with experience from our prom ticket last year, so please, if you like wrapping paper, anybody needs any, please let. Our prom ticket last year was like over $100.
Tell us more about this wrapping paper.
No, yeah, different patterns, different colors. And what's your favorite color? You can get anything.
It's the best wrapping paper.
Best wrapping paper that ever exists.
Okay, all right. Now I'm interested.
The school board, because I think they need to share them with us so that we can buy some merchandise. I think
Yeah.
popcorn.
I will definitely send everybody the link. Everybody.
John, do you wrap your own gifts? Okay, so that's going to be a problem. But we'll make up for John. We often make up for John.
The bags are great to show people.
That's what my dad always says. Then he has us wrap his own, our own gifts. And he's like, you know what, you're reading what you're getting, so it's fine. I'm like, okay. In terms of the arts, there's a Pops concert happening next week Tuesday. I'm not biased or anything, but I'm in chamber, and if you want to come and support, I would love that. But also chorus, like Meisters, Treble, and their new group, the Misters, are all going to be performing, as well as the band and symphony. About, I would say 2-3 weeks ago, the high school all-county music festival in Cornwall happened. I also participated in that. This year's was like Warwick's record broke for the amount of students that got selected to attend this festival. 42 kids were selected. If you were looking at in the audience, all you saw were a bunch of Warwick parents, and then every kid has like this like tag on their stand, and like it was like Warwick, 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 Minisink, Warwick, 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 Washingtonville, Warwick, Warwick, Warwick. So it was definitely very fun to like be playing with my peers and stuff. And lastly, Xanadu, ran by Mr. DeLeo, who I know is extremely excited to be running the play this year because he didn't get to do it in the fall. They're starting February rehearsals for next month's performance, which is March 17th and the 18th. So if you think you're going to be free, then tickets are going to be on sale on the 27th of this month. And then two more. Around like 2 days ago, Mount St. Mary College Stats class had this little experiment that they were doing. Barbie and Black Panther dolls were bungee jumping from the staircases. They were trying to predict the number of rubber bands needed for the Barbie to bungee jump 358 centimeters without hitting the floor. I just happen to know a lot of heads were falling, a lot of hair was falling out, but it's okay because they had a lot of fun testing their predictions. Lastly, for sports, I've been rehearsing how to say and, to, I'm all prepared. So the track and field are going to the purple invitational meet at the Armory this Saturday. My sister is on the track team and she definitely is very excited. She was like, we're coming home at like 12:30 or 1:30, but that's okay because I get to go. I'm like, proud of you. They're trying to qualify for states, so they're working real hard for this. The girls' basketball team is currently 12-3. And then the boys' basketball team only has one loss so far, so they're doing really, really well. And then lastly, as I don't know if you know this, but Letterman jackets have finally come out around the high school, and trust me, they're getting known. Everybody's wearing theirs. You can see it from across the hall. They're very bright, very purple, very gold, and the student body is loving it so far.
They're very popular.
Yeah, very popular. I know at least 5 of my friends have gotten theirs. My friend Lily, she got hers because her mom handed her down her Letterman jacket down to her, so she wanted to do the same when she was in school.
Nice tradition.
What event did your sister participate in?
The 4x4 for.
So you give us the results next month?
I will.
I don't think we can wait that long. Could you shoot us an email?
No, definitely. I'll send you the link with the wrapping paper.
Do it thinking. I like it. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular individual. Bill? Second. And John? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We will return to the regular meeting right after the exec session. Okay, I would like a motion to return to the regular meeting.
So moved.
Second. Lynn and Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Leach for recommendation of the superintendent of schools.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the personnel and CSE agendas.
So moved.
That's Bob, that's Ms. Sharon and Bob. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. I would like a motion to declare a district vehicle obsolete as it appears on the agenda.
So moved.
Sharon and Lynn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like a motion to approve the amended Pine Island lease agreement with the Antonio Dance Academy as it appears on the agenda.
So moved.
Lynn? Second. And John? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. I would like a motion to authorize the Assistant Superintendent for Business to transfer funds as they appear on the agenda.
So moved.
Sharon? And Bill? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like a motion to approve the Warwick Valley Teachers Association supplemental memorandum of agreement as it appears on the agenda. So moved. Bob? And Tom? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like a motion to approve the revisions/actions to the policies listed on the agenda as recommended by Erie One BOCES Policy Services and the Warwick Valley Central School District's Policy Committee.
So moved.
Lynn? And John? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like a motion to approve the resolution to allow students in the Warwick Valley Central School District to participate in the Menacing Valley High School trap shooting team for the 2023 spring sports season as it appears on the agenda. Bill? Second. John? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like a motion to approve the resolution for the Amy Bender's Memorial Scholarship.
So moved.
Lynn and Sharon. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. And a little bit of background on this is the Amy Bender Memorial Scholarship will reward a high school student who plans to pursue a degree in the arts, including but not limited to fields of study such as creative writing, drama, art history, and film studies. Prospective recipients are asked to complete the standard application and provide an essay about why they are pursuing their field of study. Amy Bender was a Warwick resident, proud mother of two, class of 2022 Warwick Valley High School graduates, and most of all a writer. She was a passionate believer in the power of storytelling to inspire creativity and build a sense of community. Amy had a large circle of friends in the writing community, and it was important to her to lift others up and help them with their craft. In addition, her contemporary romance novels under the name Amy Lamont touched a wide audience of readers. Amy unfortunately passed away in October of 2022 after a lengthy battle with cancer. This scholarship is a way for her family to ensure that her legacy of support of the arts lives on through the creativity of a new generation. Moving on, I would like a motion to approve a field trip for the high school youth and government students to travel to Albany, New York for the New York Library Association's Library Advocacy Day on Tuesday, February 28, 2023. Lynn? Second. And Tom? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. I would like a motion to approve a field trip for the Sanfordville Elementary students to travel to Turtleback Zoo in West Orange, New Jersey on Thursday, May 11th, 2023. Bob?
Second.
And Bill? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, I'm going to open up to any board members who might have any old business that they would like to discuss. Going to open it up to comments from residents. If anybody would like to address the board, now is the time. Okay. So with that, I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second, and Tom? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
All right.